Hello and welcome to Stroke of Genius Podcast Survivor Experience. I'm your host, and I am a 13-year post-stroke and brain aneurysm survivor. I've got a guy on my podcast today. I'm honored to be interviewing. His name is Bill Gasiamis. He is a host of Recovery After Stroke podcast. And what he didn't know before I met him just recently and personally is that he had a huge impact on my life as a survivor. He gave me the courage to do what I'm doing today. So I'm going to bring him online right now. Like this is a bumper. Oh, I can't wait for you to meet him. He's an amazing man. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Aaron, how are you, man?
I'm doing really good. Really, really good. It's such an honor to have you on the other side podcasting with me. That's awesome.
Lovely to meet you too. It's been a long time, and I'm glad we made it.
Now, please introduce yourself, where you're from, where you're coming from.
So I'm Bill Gasiamis. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and I am a stroke survivor. So I had three brain hemorrhages over 3 years because of a arteriovenous malformation. It's a faulty blood vessel that you're born with. And then after the third bleed, I had to have brain surgery and I had to learn how to walk again and use my left side. And in about 2017, I decided that I wanted to meet more stroke survivors. And I had an idea for a podcast that I started in 2015. And then I rapidly changed the quality or the content of that podcast so that it was exclusive to just interviews with stroke survivors. And I'm the host of the Recovery After Stroke podcast.
You know, I said earlier in the podcast how you impact, you didn't know, but you were impacting my life. You didn't know until we met
Mm.
recently. And, you gave me the courage to do what I'm doing, bro. And for that, I want to say, right, worldwide, thank you. Thank you for choosing to do what you do and make a difference there. And I'm doing the same thing now.
Yeah, it's great that you're doing the same thing. And that's how I was encouraged, not by another stroke survivor, but I used to listen to podcasts and I found that the best podcasts are the ones where people just talk, it's not scripted. And then you're hearing stories of people who are just like me. Their podcast might be bigger, they might have a bigger audience, they might be the biggest podcast in the world, it doesn't matter. But they're just like me, and all they're doing is getting together and talking. And that's what I was lacking. I was lacking that ability to talk. And once you get your head around the technical side, which microphone to buy, which is not expensive, which software to record on. Once you get your head around all of that, then getting together once a week with somebody and talking to them about stroke, that's the easy part. And what I found that there was a lot of personal satisfaction for me because it was helping me recover. It was helping me heal. I didn't know the impact that it was having on other people, but like you, so many people tell me every week that they are getting amazing results by listening to the podcast. It's helping them a lot and it's making a difference to their recovery. And I never expected that. That's the bonus. That's the bonus that I never expected. So I'm so glad that what it then does is inspire other stroke survivors to get off their butt and do something amazing with their life, not just sit back and wait for death to turn up.
Bill, that's really, I wanted to touch on that because I think I, I would almost want from one of those stroke survivors who sat on their butt. And I'm going to say the majority of our brothers that just sit down after the stroke, but they don't realize the stroke is a superpower. And look at you. Look what you're doing. And we're gonna get into yours because I personally want to know a little bit about your stroke life and how it's led you on the journey to where you're now a published author, bro. So I want to inspire anybody out there. Bill and I, our only difference between if you're sitting there and not doing anything with your stroke,
Yeah.
the only difference, Bill, you and me, is a decision. You just decide, I'm going to make something out of a stroke. I'm going to help people. I'm going to find the purpose in my stroke. And that's what Bill and I did.
Yeah. I had I was a guy who had a painting company before the stroke, and I still have that painting company, but I was working a lot, too many hours. Uh, I wasn't getting any help from anybody. I didn't understand all the intricacies of running a business. I was really stressed. I was a bit annoying to be around. I was a bit painful when I got home. Sometimes I took out my frustrations at the kids and the wife. And what the stroke did is it kind of put things into perspective. And I was unwell for 3 years, very unwell for 3 years. So it's not like you're seeing me and you think, well, he had it good, or he had a, he didn't have the issues that I've got. Well, I had all those issues. I had cognitive issues. I couldn't drive. I couldn't work. At some point, I couldn't walk. I couldn't remember my wife. My left side didn't work. So I've had to overcome a lot of things, and I still live with fatigue some days, and I still have difficulty having energy, the energy to do things certain days. Everything that stroke survivors talk about, I have on a different level than everybody else, right? So I still struggle with all my stuff, but I figured if I set my entire existence just focusing on that stuff, I was going to get really unhappy and be really sad and depressed all the time. So I wanted to solve the problems that I had, and I had a lot of problems, and I went about solving those problems, and that's what I did. So I took control where I could, Aaron, and one of the things I could control easily, for example, was my food, what I ate, which meant it was more about what I didn't eat, which meant I stopped eating sugar, I stopped eating pasta and bread, I stopped eating caffeine, and I stopped eating drinking alcohol. So as soon as I did that, I started to notice some benefits, physically, mentally. I had some weight loss, I had some energy levels increase, all that type of thing. And then as I started to do that, and then I found, for example, the benefit of meditation. I meditated and I did that, and I found a positive result. I found that I was in control of some of the aspects to recovery that I didn't know I was in control of. So I had a lot of positive things that I was doing that were helping me, that didn't cost me anything extra. And as a result of that, I started to discover that I could share these things with other people. And that's how the podcast idea came to be. Is I wanted to learn from them and see what they were doing, people interviewing me, that I was interviewing, so that I could use that information, and then I would share my information. And all of a sudden, we had this beautiful community that we were creating and learning from each other. And what comes from that is you stop feeling alone. You stop feeling like you're on the journey alone. And that's what most of the people who listen to the podcast say is the benefit of it, right? And then over time, at around about episode 70, I noticed myself saying, I think stroke's the best thing that happened to me. And it
Mhm.
was strange, really strange for me to say that, because that's a weird thing to say. And it wasn't the actual stroke that was the best thing that happened to me. It was what it created afterwards, all the positive things that happened. We hear about post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, I was having post-traumatic growth. I was growing, right, after the stroke, and I didn't realize that until a few years down the track, that I've changed. I'm a completely different person, and I have had a lot of growth since my stroke. And when I asked my followers on Instagram, when I asked them, has anyone else had that experience? Do they think that stroke is the best thing that happened to them? Many of them said they did. And that was crazy. I couldn't believe it. So I interviewed them to find out why they were saying that. And what I found was that we had all these 10 things in common. And those 10 things became the chapters of the book that I wrote, The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened. And the idea sort of started in 2019. I interviewed people for about 2 years. By the time I got everyone together and interviewed them individually, um, saw the pattern, wrote the initial kind of layout of the book, had the chapters, and then was ready to write the book. There was 2 years before I wrote it, and then it took me 2 years to write it. And it took 2 years to write because I'm a stroke survivor, and it's very hard to write a book. And it released in December last year, December 2023. So that's a little bit of my story.
That is brilliant. I want to, so everybody knows out there. I will put all the links to Bill's social media and to his purchases book in the description of the video. So, Bill, I want to back up just a little bit. How old were you when you had your stroke?
37 the first time. And I had my surgery, brain surgery, at 40.
So did you? So you had the EVM. I'm familiar with those. I don't know how to say it, but I'm not gonna try. Could you? What does AVM stand for?
Arteriovenous malformation.
Now, that malformation where normally per normal person would have one vein. All of a sudden, for whatever reason, your vein in your brain decided to brain to like 10, 15 different small veins, right?
So what it is, it's a normal vein, and then it breaks off into this weird, strange vein, and the vein looks like a spaghetti mixed, like some spaghetti on the plate, and it's not normal to look like that, and it's quite thin, and it's malformed. It's not built correctly, and it's with me from birth. So my entire life, I've had this malformation, this incorrect formed blood vessel, and then because it's kind of like the weakest link in the blood vessels, when you have a high blood pressure episode, or you're stressed or something like that, it's the weakest link, so it is possible that it could pop. And then one day it just bled, it popped, and that's what happened. That's just this blood vessel that I was born with that did nothing for 37 years, and then just one day it popped.
Yes, very similar on the brain aneurysm first. And it's very similar. It's a type of aneurysm, really. AVM is very similar. It's a bleed. Some AVMs bleed where the blood just goes through the vein wall because it's so thin.
Yeah.
But yours ruptured. Yours actually ruptured, right?
Yeah, similar way. Like it's weak, it's thinner, um, it it's not strong. So what happened was, like an aneurysm, the blood eventually just pushes its way through, gets out.
Now, so was there any? Let's jump up somebody out there. So, if was there any pre-warning signs you had this was going to occur that maybe you ignored?
I had about a year and a half before the bleed. I had a massive headache, the biggest headache you can possibly imagine. And I ended up in hospital, and they did a scan and they couldn't find any issue. What they were looking for a bleed in the brain, but there was no blood yet. It hadn't bled yet. And I think what it was doing was just having a bad day and letting me know about it. And uh, and that was the only warning sign. I didn't have any other warning signs. When it bled, uh, I had numbness. The numbness started in my left toe, and then I ignored that symptom because I thought it's got nothing to do with my brain. How am I supposed to know it's got to do with my brain? I ignored that, and then what happened was the numbness spread from my big toe to my entire left side over 7 days, and it was after 7 days that I finally went to the hospital.
My God, that's 7 days later. So, Garrett, you're saying it started bleeding, it ruptured, but I want your body told you, you ignored it. And I don't know about you, my experience, most stroke survivors ignore the warning sign. The body is telling them there's something wrong. You need to go to the hospital. But they brush it off. They say, "Oh, I'm tired. I'm whatever. I'm the right. Am I right?" So,
I brushed it off. I had work to do. If I go to the hospital, I'll be there for too long. I won't be able to go to work the next day.
my God.
There's nothing wrong with me. I'm busy. My clients need me. If I don't go to work, we won't get paid. You name it. I came up with every excuse.
Yeah, I know that one. That's but so typical of our people that we interview, isn't it? And it's one of the worst things we can do because we know be fast is the lots of time. And most of us, I have headaches too. My aneurysm swelled up. I have a feeling yours even began to swell. It didn't burst, swell. That push in your brain caused the pain. Headache you never. Now, so what did you do? You said you went to ER when that occurred, or did you, when did you
Yeah.
go to the ER?
So I went to the chiropractor first because I thought I had done something to my back early on in the week.
Gosh.
And he said, "You haven't done anything to your back." By the seventh day, I had visited the chiropractor twice. And then on the seventh day, he said, "You need to go to the hospital." So I went to the hospital eventually after arguing with him because I was busy and I didn't want to go. I went home. I told my wife. I argued with her. She convinced me to go. And then when I went there and explained that I couldn't feel my left side, they took me immediately into CT scan. And about 4 or 5 hours later, they had admitted me to the hospital. They came back and told me that they found uh, a shadow on the brain and they didn't know what had caused it. And that's when they first diagnosed the bleed. They discovered that there was a bleed there.
Wow. No, I know the headaches. The headaches terrible. But you mentioned before you went. You went before it actually ruptured, and he sent you home or something, didn't you?
My chiropractor sent me home.
Oh, chiropractor.
Yeah, the chiropractor sent me home the first time because the numbness was only up to my foot by then. So it was only 2 or 3 days after. See, I had known this chiropractor for more than 10 years by the time this thing happened to me because I used to see him all the time because I would do something silly at work, lift something the wrong way, pinch this or injure a muscle, and I would make it his responsibility to get me back to work. So I just thought it was another thing that I had done to my back, lifting something heavy or turning the wrong way. And he said to me, "There's nothing obvious with your foot being numb. It's probably inflammation, and monitor for a couple of days. If it changes, let me know and make another appointment." Now it changed the next day and the next day and the next day. I finally got to him 5 days after my first appointment. So it was a whole entire week, and then like my whole left side is completely numb. I
Oh,
didn't think for 1 minute to go to the hospital. I only thought that I need to go see my chiropractor daily.
oh my God.
Yeah, that was the only thing. And I went and saw him, and he goes, in a minute, after being there for 1 minute that day, he said to me, "There's nothing wrong with your back. You need to go to the hospital." And he
Wow.
diagnosed it straight away. And I said to him, "Look, I can't go to the hospital. I'm working tomorrow. If I go to the hospital,
Oh my God.
they'll keep me here. And, like if they keep me there, I'll be in there for a day and I won't be able to go to work." And he said, "You really need to go to the hospital. There's no way for me to say it." He didn't want to alarm me because "You need to go to the hospital once, two, three, 4 times." Anyway, he
Wow.
was he was the person who um, followed his training. He followed his training and he realized after the second visit that this is not a chiropractic issue. You need to go to the hospital. Yeah.
Well, great friend, thank you for what that was. I find it amazing. So then you had your stroke. So before we jump in, because I really want to leave time to talk, this might go a little over, because I really want to talk how you became an author and talk about your book. But I'm curious, when he told you had stroke, you then what kind of deficits did you have when you first pulled out your stroke? You know how you're in hospital. What deficits did you have?
That's the weird thing. When I went to hospital, they gave me some medication and the numbness on my left side went away completely. They gave me a steroid called dexamethasone, and that is designed to decrease inflammation in the brain and save the brain. And it did that. So the bleed is still happening. It's dripping. A very small amount of blood is coming out. So they had time. And when they gave me the medication, all the numbness went away. I had no deficits when I was at hospital the first time. And I went home and I was told to stay home for 6 weeks, no work, no driving, nothing. And when when I went, when my 6 week appointment came up, because they wanted to see me again after 6 weeks, a day before or 2 days before that appointment, I had the second bleed, and now the amount of blood that was sitting in my head went from about the size of a dime to about the size of a golf ball. And then what happened was the deficits after that were, at one stage I couldn't recognize my wife. I didn't know who she was. They told me to point to my chin, and I didn't know. I thought they were talking. I thought that it was a person.
I know.
Um, I couldn't start and finish sentences. I couldn't type an email. Uh, I forgot. I couldn't remember who had come to visit me. I had short-term memory loss. Um, I was very, very fatigued. I couldn't walk from the couch to the bathroom without getting fatigued. And it was like that. My deficits were like that for about 9 to 10 months. And as they kept monitoring me, because I had monthly MRIs with my surgeon, with the lady who eventually became my surgeon, as they kept scanning me, they started to notice that the blood clot was decreasing in size. It was getting absorbed and dealt with by the brain. It was going away, and my deficits started to decrease. They started to go away, and I started to feel really good and felt a lot better for about 2 years until the third bleed. And the third bleed, I was driving to work because I had gone back to work by then. I was driving by then, and I was driving to work, and I started to notice that my left side was burning like I had sunburn, but only on half side of my body. And I I didn't think much of it, but I got out of my car. I walked around the car to see if I can shake it off. Like, what is this? It's strange. And it kind of went away for about a minute. And then when I got back in the car, the burning sensation came back. And I realized that must be another bleed. And I drove myself to the hospital. I was admitted to the hospital and I stayed there for another few days when my surgeon met me and said, "You need to have surgery." Now, even in this time, I didn't have a lot of deficits. If you saw me, nobody would know that I had a bleeding brain. Nobody would know I had any condition that was related to that. They couldn't tell. And then we had brain surgery about 3 weeks after my third visit to the hospital for another bleed. And then the deficits, when I woke up from surgery, uh, they said to me, "Let's go take you to the bathroom and take you for a walk." And as soon as I got up and put my weight on my left leg, I fell to the ground because I had no sensation on my left side. And then I had to stay in rehab for a month, about a week in hospital, and then a month in rehab, where I had to learn how to walk again and use my left arm again. And those deficits have healed. Like, I can walk again and use my left arm again, but my left side is numb all the time. So it's numb, it's colder, it's weaker. It has the muscles are tight and tense. So there's a little bit of spasticity there. So I have all of that, and then I also deal with just daily. Sometimes my brain is a little bit off the planet. It's a little bit fatigued. I struggle with thinking. I struggle with energy levels. But the book, the book came about in that time because I had a lot of downtime. I had a lot of time to myself to think about the concept, to develop the concept. Even though I was working, I wasn't. Uh, I wasn't doing too much compared to what I was doing before. I wasn't doing 16-hour days every day and all that kind of stuff because I can't work to that extent anymore. So with the book, I had never written a book before, and it was very difficult to get my head around how I'm going to do that. And I hired a book coach. Hired a lady who gave me the structure of the entire book, and I had the chapters and the content was in my head. What I was going to put in each chapter was in my head, and it was my responsibility to take that out of my head and put it in writing. But she gave me the introduction, paragraph, how it's going to be laid out, and that's what I needed. And then she was my coach. So she would check in with me on a monthly basis and say, "Hey, how's it coming along? Any problems? What do you need?" And we would talk about it for uh, about an hour, half an hour. And that was kind of my person who made me accountable to help me take these ideas out of my head and put them on the page. And I had many months where I didn't write anything because sometimes you get stuck. You don't know how to write, you don't know what to write, or your energy levels are not great. So this book, something that should have taken a year, really, it took 2 years. But it was good to get it finished and get it to the end. This book coach, she also had connections with people who did artwork for the cover. She had connections with an editor. She had a person who would do uh, all the design and the layout of the paragraphs, the headings, and all of that stuff. So by the time I got to the end, all I had to do was write the manuscript and hand it to her finished. She had it edited, and then she had the book laid out and designed. And then we spoke to the graphics design guy, and who did the front page and the cover. And then they put it all together, and then they send you a file that's for Amazon, perfect for Amazon. They put it together and they send you a file, and then you upload it to Amazon, and the book's good to go.
Well, you mentioned the book, and it's perfect timing because I want people to know we have 30 minutes or so, as I can't go over. I knew I would. But you were condensing years of your life into 30 minutes. I mean, you went through hell. I'm pardon me. We went through a hard time, a lot. But then, title of your book, Stroke, the best thing that ever happened. Come on, bro. I mean, tell me
But
why you came about that name. What is behind that name?
the old me doesn't write a book. The old me doesn't have a podcast that goes around the world. The old me doesn't meet people and get interviewed on national television and radio programs. The old me doesn't do doesn't do coaching of anybody and help anybody anyway.
Right.
I coach stroke survivors to recover. The old me doesn't do public speaking. So all of these things came, and that's just a few of the things. They came after the stroke. The guy before that goes to work every day, works 16 hours, comes home, whinges and bitches and moans, and then goes and does it all again the next day. I didn't have time for myself. I didn't have a community. I wasn't learning anything. I was just doing the same thing. I was a rat. I was a rat on a wheel, just running around in circles. So that's why it took me a long time to get here. This is year 12. My first experience with a brain hemorrhage was in 2012. It's 2024. This is year 12. It seems like I just got here and I'm talking about it and it's amazing, but it wasn't. It was hard. It was difficult. I learned a lot about myself, how I've overcome so many things, how I've done the hard yards, how I was more resilient than I thought I was, how I was tougher than I was, how, I was able to get my mental health uh, sorted. And I'm still working on these things every day. It's not like I just did it once and I dropped it. I still go to counseling. I've gone back to the gym recently. Um, all of these things have been battles that I've had to fight and overcome. I compare myself to the old guy. The old guy had all of the ability and didn't have the mental toughness to get to the gym once a week because it was too hard. Now it's harder than ever, and I'm at the gym 2 times a week. Now it's harder than ever to concentrate and to write and to read, and I wrote a book. Now it's harder than ever, to um, do many things, to juggle all these things: work, podcast, coaching, family, and I'm managing to do it all. I've grown so much. I am not recognizable. You see my face, I'm the same guy that was having that bleed 12 years ago, but I am a completely different person. And that has only been positive. I live with the deficits every day. They're never going to go away, but they're not stopping me from living my life. And I was stopping myself from living my life before that, and I was fully able-bodied. I mean, how can stroke not be the best thing that happened?
Well, you're talking about a breakthrough, and I'll tell you, I had a very similar experience. But we're not, it's like a vortex. You cross over to a different look at yourself. You then become like, I'm hearing what you're saying. You became a better person.
Hmm.
And you're impacting my life and impacting thousands of people around the world with your podcast. That is amazing. Yeah. How can you say it was not the best thing that ever happened? Well, bro, good for you. I'm just so proud and honored to you. So we're gonna put the link to your book in the podcast, in the description of the video. But I just want to say in closing, if there's any final words, let's say you and I, there's a newer stroke survivor out there. What would be your advice to that newer stroke survivor?
It would be suspend your disbelief and put some faith in yourself for once, that you are capable of doing far greater things than you have ever done, even though you've had a stroke. Never give up and always look for solutions to your problems rather than focusing on how many problems you have. If you focus on how many problems you have, you're going to find more and more and more. If you look for solutions to your problems, you're going to find more and more solutions. I would say that listen to other people who have had a stroke and their recovery and what they've been able to achieve and accomplish, and if you listen to a lot of interviews, you will see a pattern emerge: what people who have a successful recovery do and what people who don't have a successful recovery do. And that doesn't mean that they are walking, that doesn't mean that they are fully able-bodied. They might have vision problems, they might have all sorts of issues, they might have aphasia, but they can still have a successful recovery even if they still have aphasia, even if they're not walking properly, even if they can't move one of their arms. I consider myself fully recovered, yet I still live with all these deficits. I still have to have counseling. I still have to go to the gym and work my body. I still have to rest more. I still have fatigue days. I still feel myself completely healed and recovered from what happened to me. I just have these scars that other people have in different places. And we can still move on and carry on through life and do amazing things with the scars that stroke has left us.
That's amazing, bro. Really. Could you do me a favor and hold your book up one more time? And it is stroke, the best thing that ever happened. And it's available on Amazon. I'll put the links in in the truth of the deal. I would say, from what I hear about your book, I've watched a couple of podcasts. It's going to give you how to put yourself. You to even get on diet. Don't you even give me some of the headaches in your book, bro.
Yeah, so it's 10 tools for recovery and personal transformation. So there's a chapter there on mindset. There's a chapter on the heart brain. Okay. There's a chapter there on the gut brain. The gut brain is related to our identity, about taking action, about pushing through fear. There's a chapter on sleep, nutrition, exercise. There's a chapter on doing things for other people and finding your community, like searching out and finding your community. Um, and that's, I think, 8. I'm forgetting one of them, but that's okay. And then the final chapter is the chapter on finding your purpose.
Big one.
And that's a big one after stroke, right? What am I on the planet for? What's the point of it all? And that is what happened to me. I found my purpose. Now, how I found it was I didn't work out in my head, I'm going to make this my purpose. I did all these other things first, and then my purpose emerged. So you don't get to you don't find your purpose by doing uh, by planning it. It kind of just sneaks up on you, and all of a sudden, here you are. And what's my purpose? You know what it is, right? It's the Recovery After Stroke podcast. It's helping stroke survivors. It's sharing stories. It's helping people recover. I didn't know that I was going to find my purpose in life. I just wanted to do things that would benefit me, at the same time benefit other people. And that beautiful thing of doing things for other people, and then you get a benefit and they get a benefit, that's how purpose emerges. It might be different for everybody, but that that's like the the bonus that you get for doing all this other work. And that's kind of the path that I'm on. And that's another reason why stroke's the best thing that happened to me. Like, I have a purpose in life. Before, my purpose was narrow. It was about my kids, right? I got to feed them, clothe them, put them through school, all that kind of stuff, which is fine. It's a really lovely purpose. But when they turn 18 and they leave home and they don't need you anymore, your purpose kind of gets a little bit damaged, and you wonder, what am I really here for? And what I'm here for is, the way my kids are still involved in my purpose is I want to be a good example to them. If something should happen to them and they should become unwell through their life, I want them to have a good example of how you can respond to adversity. So that's part of my purpose now. That's also what I am for stroke survivors. I want to be the example, how you respond to adversity. That's the point of you and me meeting and talking about this and sharing it, so that we can encourage people. And I'm glad that I have that now. I didn't have that before my life.
Feels great, doesn't it? I feels fantastic.
It does.
So, Bill, we kind of say we're out of time. Thank you so much for being here. I hope we come back, because I could do a whole nother podcast easily with you. I have so many questions, but I wanted to thank you so much for being here. It was an honor to have you on my podcast. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for overcoming your challenges to meet me and to have this podcast and to organize it. And I'd be happy to come back anytime.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Thank you again.
Set me on fire.